You're listening to Healing Voices Project, where we share stories and the latest information from people who fight addiction every day. I'm Mike Torville, your host and author of Voices from the Fallen. Thank you for listening, for following, and most of all, for sharing with people you care about. Make your voice count too. Hello, everybody. I'm Mike Torville at Healing Voices Project. Glad to have you back. And today we have a guest who has been a frequent visitor, a friend. And if you have seen some of our previous episodes with Mark Jachym, we have guests on that talk about their history of addiction, about their recovery, about their work in the field, about harm reduction, about training, people who have experienced jail time, multiple rehabs. Mark checks all those boxes. So he's got a lot to talk about, and he's been here a few times, but I think it's always good having you back, Mark. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, good to be back.
Sure. I tell you what, you've got always lots to talk about, and we could talk for hours about your experiences, about your work, whether it's about harm reduction, about training, advocacy,
right.
Recovery coach. You've pretty much done it all. Cripes, at this point, you could write a book.
Well, that might take a little too long for me. I don't have the patience for that.
Now, we'll just talk.
Yeah, let's talk.
So you have been involved with a lot, and I know you've got a little history. By the way, March 31st is Monday.
Yes.
That's 10 years for you, isn't it?
April 1st.
April 1st, 10 years. Well, congratulations, man.
Yeah.
That's 10 years, only days away.
Yes.
10
Almost
years.
there.
Wow.
It seems a little, when I look at it as, holy cow, it's been a decade of, healthy living for the most part. It's pretty intense. I never thought I would get to where I am right now, ever. I figured I would have been dead years ago, almost was. But yeah, 10 years, kind of a cool day, I guess.
It is. It will be. Yeah.
It's one of those things now where I'm, it's just another day for the most part, but it's a cool day. It's April Fool's Day, so that kind of fits perfectly for how I was for quite a long time.
All right.
But 10 years I think is an interesting milestone.
March 31st, 2015 was your last drink.
Yes.
Yep. And I know you've gone through a lot just prior to that day.
Right.
Obviously, we talked about that. And by the way, I'll just throw this in because if you don't know Mark's story, Mark's been with us a few times, and we talked in great detail about your story through your addiction and all that's occurred through then. I'd suggest going to the Healing Voices Project website or YouTube channel and look up Mark Jachym, and you hear your story in detail and what brought you to where you are now. So 10 years of sobriety, which followed 20 or 30 years of.
So I started at age 13, drinking alcohol. There were multiple other substances mixed in, cocaine, Percocet, Vicodin, things of that nature throughout the years. And in 2015, I was 45 years old. 45 years old. And that was the end of that. So 32
years, yeah.
It's almost like a full career of working and then retiring.
I guess your life just changed, but there was a lot to that. And of course, I know that you had been arrested. You spent some time in jail. You came close to dying, and I know that's another experience that you've talked about previously. We'll talk a little bit about your experience just to give new listeners a little chance, a quick kind of a 5-minute where you've been, what's happened, and then, but more importantly, is why you're here back to talk about your current job, what you're doing, and talk about harm reduction, about
what you're seeing in terms of reduction of OD fatalities.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to talk a little bit about that. But it's why I love having you with us, because you've seen it all.
Right.
And you were outreach coordinator, among many other things, recovery coach.
Yeah.
So you've been down and dirty with this. And so anyway, I think that it may be worth, if you don't mind, just sharing a little bit about, we'll take 32 years and kind of squeeze it into 5 minutes.
Yeah.
So people can understand where you come from, right?
I mean, I lived the typical
Yeah.
life when I was younger, high school, college, parties, things like that.
Yeah.
There were times where I handled everything that I was putting into my body pretty well, and then as time progressed, things got a lot worse. Like when I was drinking a lot more, basically 100 proof vodka straight all day long, to the point of, I used to calling it, we just drink so much that you pass out. Well, that's technically an alcohol poisoning, and it's an alcohol overdose. So I was overdosing basically on alcohol every single day.
Every day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes even multiple times a day. Like I would, wake up and then do it again. But during that time, I had been working as a corrections officer in my past life, coming into work hungover, drinking immediately right after, doing other things, lines of cocaine, pills, whatever it might have been, to kind of take the edge off at the end of the day, which, it turned into, as time went by, I was getting into trouble with the law. I got arrested for an OUI in Westfield, had been put on probation. I got arrested again while on probation for being intoxicated and ended up going to jail for 5 months. And then when I got out of jail, I was drinking that night. As soon as I got out, I was already drinking again. And then there was a couple more arrests into 2015, which led to me getting Section 35, which is involuntary commitment. So those things happened. I also had gone to rehab up in Brattleboro a couple of different times during that stretch. It just was a lot of turmoil, a lot of chaos, and just not a good period of time. And then that last week of March 31st, it was the 24th and the 31st, I had gotten arrested twice in the same week by Agawam police. Woke up both times in the same holding cell. So after the second time I was arrested, I looked up at the ceiling and said, oh God, this is the same place I was at last week. Mm-hmm. This isn't good, and I don't really know how I got here. So I tried to end my life in that holding cell right there, and for some reason I thought about a whole different bunch of things. I thought about my now current wife. I thought about my family. I thought about my daughter, all these different things, and I said, I can't do this. And I managed to undo the situation that I was in.
You were within minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's when I kind of regrouped and said, I need help. And I made a phone call to my
Now,
parents
you
that
had
night.
been in a couple rehabs prior to that, though.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And in intensive outpatient treatment as well a few times.
It didn't stick.
No, not even close.
But this time, what was different that made it stick this time? You would just explain you were really giving some thought about your family. Was that the deciding factor, or was there something else that changed?
I think I got to the point where I said to myself, if you're ready to die, things are really, really bad, and I didn't really want to. Part of me did, but I clearly, I can't even explain.
But you couldn't
how
take
I felt.
living like that. Is that what you're?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I basically had enough and said I can't keep doing this. I was tired of not feeling well. I was tired of getting arrested. I was also, I knew that after a half a dozen arrests that I had been through, this time I was probably looking at a nice chunk of jail time. After all was said and done, when I went to Brockton for my Section 35, I got out. I still had to face the charges in front of the judge that I had originally gotten arrested for. The judge told me, he's like, I'm going to give you one last shot. What you do with this is up to you. And I passed through that year, and I've been sober and abstinent since. And when I say abstinence, this is what works for me. It doesn't necessarily work for everybody. I still drink my coffee, and caffeine is still there, but everything else. But I had to go back and face what may happen. And after all was said and done, and I completed all that, I found out that the judge had me down for anywhere between serving 9 months and 2.5 years in jail. So Judge Content in Westfield was a fair fella and let me figure it out. And if I didn't, I was going to go to jail. Simple as that. And
So you had that hanging over you.
Yep.
While time went by, knowing that was the alternate path. Yeah.
And I didn't want that.
Because you've been there before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, as a former corrections officer, which I don't even really like talking about anymore because that's a part of my life that is just way in the rear view now.
Almost as if it was someone else, right?
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. Part of me wishes it was someone else, to be honest with you. But going to jail, that wasn't something that was a whole different experience. And, I knew a lot of people in jail too, whether they were in jail and I was their CO, excuse me, or they were friends of mine. So it just was a really weird dynamic for that 5 months. And I didn't really want to go back. So when I was given the opportunity, I kind of ran with it. You have to do the 90 and 90 thing for AA meetings. I was an overachiever. I did about 180 and 90.
180 what meetings. You mean by that? The 90 and 90.
90 and 90. Basically, what courts usually do is say, okay, part of your probation is you have to attend 90 AA meetings or NA meetings or another 12-step type meeting. 90 meetings in 90 days. You have to have your paper
Every
signed off
day.
on by the chairperson of the meeting and all that. And I was hitting multiple meetings a day, and I hit at least 180. So.
And how short of a time? I mean, if you
in those 90 days.
Wow.
Where I lived at the time in Westfield, there were 3 meetings throughout the day that I could attend. So I probably hit well over 200.
Wow.
And that worked for a little while, until it didn't, and I was all set with that type of recovery.
You were just on an accelerated pace. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, that was an interesting time, and now that it's almost been 10 years, sometimes it seems like it was just a couple months ago. Other times it feels like it was a lifetime ago.
It's amazing how how you can detach.
Yeah.
And then, so after the abstinence, after you're finding yourself separating from that life, you got a job. Did you work in this field right away? What brought you into this field that you're in now?
So I did. The only place that would actually hire me was the Mental Health Association, and I think I mentioned it here before. Amy Conklin, who was one of the directors over there, she was a facilitator of groups while I was in jail, and I knew her from there, but we didn't really know each other. You know what I mean? It was like we recognized each other, but that was it.
Yeah.
And once we started talking and we did an interview, she ended up giving me the opportunity, and ever since then it was like I was off and running. She was fantastic. She didn't have to give me the opportunity, but she did, and I thank her for doing all that. That
opened things up. That was the chance you needed to.
Yep.
And you've been in that type of work ever since.
Yes.
Which is 7-8 years now.
About 8, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
And that led to, and you've done community outreach, you've done harm reduction. In this last 7-8 years,
Yes.
you've done explain some of the work that you've done, that you've been involved with.
So I worked at a shelter in Springfield,
Mm-hmm.
largest shelter outside of Boston,
Yeah.
low barrier, and also, I mean, I don't really like the term so much, but it's a wet shelter. People can come in after using substances. They don't have to be stone cold sober to be allowed in. The only requirement in my mind to be accepted into shelter is the need for shelter,
Well,
right?
that's
So I was working there for a while. That was fantastic. I loved it. Then I was given the opportunity to work in the south end of Springfield as a community outreach coordinator, which was really fantastic because that allowed me to be out in the community a lot more than I had previously been. I was working with folks that, again, I knew the vast majority of people out on the street in Springfield already. So I got to see them every day. I got to provide them with basic needs, clothes, socks, food, water, sunscreen during the summertime, things like that. And also, I didn't have Tapestry Health does the syringe access and the syringe exchange in Springfield. I didn't do syringe exchange or access, but I had everything else. I had new pipes. I had bleach kits for folks who were using syringes. I had Plan B. I had, you name it, I had it. And people really, really appreciated that. And I just think it was something that was so basic, a basic necessity for people, that I didn't really feel like I was working. It's just like you're out there helping and talking to people and just having a regular old day, and
almost as if it was meant for you to do this. I mean, it was a natural thing for you, right?
I believe it was.
Yeah. And now you're in a different position. Tell us about your job now.
So now I am a program manager at a medical respite up in Northampton, and what that is folks who are unhoused, may need some type of a medical procedure. Could be anything. They could have a broken leg. Maybe they have cancer. Maybe they just need a colonoscopy. Maybe they need any type of medical
treatment.
And if they need a place to recover. Right. If we all have surgery or we have a broken leg, we need some place to relax, to just heal. Some people can't get that if they're out on the street. So what we do is we have, right now it's a 10-bed unit. We're going to be expanding, but we can take referrals, bring people in, as long as they have to be able to take care of themselves a little bit. Shower, use the bathroom, feed themselves, that type of thing. But I think it's a fantastic place. I think it's great.
Is this a private company, or is it?
It's CSO, Clinical and Support Options. Fantastic. The state had run a pilot program. I think there was 6, maybe 7 in the state, and it's a necessity. Like, some folks have a higher level of care needed to them, where they can't just go into a regular shelter. Because some shelters, you have to be up at 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock in the morning, have breakfast, you have to leave for the day. Other places you don't.
Well, certainly if you're recovering from sort of medical treatment, obviously that's not going to work.
Right.
Yeah.
So this place is really great. And I mean, we allow folks, to go out into the community, do what they have to do during the day. They can use substances and come back in. That's perfectly fine. That's judgment-free, stigma-free, all that. And, that in itself is in my mind, a form of harm reduction, just letting people have the autonomy to do what they want to do.
Like you said, it's necessary. Things that other people take for granted.
Yes.
It's necessary for people who don't have that. And you talked about when you last here, we talked about barriers too, the barriers that people have to overcome. It's, again, stuff that most of us might take for granted. Talk a little bit about some of those barriers that people have to getting access to programs like this, or access to any type of treatment that whether it's health insurance or other types of barriers that they have.
Yeah,
challenges.
we have folks that come in that have no insurance. They have no birth certificate, no ID, no social security card, nothing like that. They might not have their EBT card. They don't have anything. So when they come in, one of I'm biased. She's also my best friend, but Tanya Alessi works with me, and she's absolutely phenomenal at what she does. She connects people to housing. She connects folks to their birth certificate, ID, social security card, gets them where they need to go, and gets people housed actually quite often. You know, and in today's housing market, it's pretty
challenging.
Yeah, and she does a great job. So I have some really great staff under me as well. And I just think that those are the types of things that are really, really awesome and are really, really needed. And
one of the things that I think about a lot, that we talk to a lot of our guests about too, is the impact on your family. And families don't have the right information. They don't make good decisions, and sometimes those decisions have a counter effect, right? With all kinds of unintended consequences that from their decisions, and sometimes people get detached from their family. So talk about those family challenges too, that and if you find somebody who you described with no ID, no access, no support, and what you're finding, I would assume, is sometimes you have to ask them, do you have family?
right.
And what do you see a lot with that they what are you finding when you ask that question? Do you have family support?
Most of the time it's no. A lot of folks, when they're deep into chaotic use and on the streets, their families may not completely cut ties, but won't allow them to come home until they, get better. And usually that means, they have to do what the family wants them to do, not what they want to do. Basically, it's forcing somebody to do something in order to make the family happy. And I get that, right? But at the same time, that's not usually a successful way to go about things. So when folks are with us, a lot of times what happens is, maybe we start having them reach out. And if the family will talk with them, then they say, hey, I'm here, I'm doing this, I'm working toward this. And it starts to at least build a relationship. Maybe not great, but it starts to at least get the conversation going with folks. We've had a few people that have been discharged from our program, and they've reunited with family. They've gone home to family. So that, to me, I think that's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, getting an apartment is great. I think it's even more amazing when somebody gets reunited with their family, whether it's a partner, parents, brother, sister, whatever.
Yeah, and I think if families got involved with a program like yours, they could see maybe a different perspective and say, okay, if we can participate in this or support it, or even just accept it and go with it, because a lot of times they're frustrated because they have had many times where things didn't work out and they've been in and out of the house or kicked out and said, okay, we just can't take it anymore. I was talking to a friend just last week, and he said, we just don't know what to do anymore. We're just exhausted, and we can't do this anymore. So we have to detach.
Yeah.
And that's a common thing you hear, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
It's too bad.
Yeah.
It happened to me. I lost contact with some of my family members when I was in the worst place I could possibly be. But as time went by and I got better, the relationship came back.
Yeah.
Not right away. You gotta, earn that trust back and everything, and it can happen. So.
Yeah, it can happen.
Yeah.
And it does. Now, you talked a little bit about harm reduction, but I see your shirt says Hope Shot Harm Reduction.
Yeah, this friend of mine makes these. Narcan Nate. He's from California, and if anybody ever wants any of his stuff, Narcan Nate has a website too to buy whatever he wants. Shameless plug there for
So if you Google Narcan Nate, right,
Yep.
then you'll.
Yep.
But we talked about harm reduction, and the other thing we're going to talk about too is because I think it leads into it, harm reduction, and hence the reduction of overdose fatalities.
Yes.
How much is harm reduction plans and programs affecting the reduction of OD fatalities?
So I think there's a few different factors.
Yeah.
Number one, Narcan, naloxone is everywhere, which is fantastic.
When you say everywhere, I mean just for people who don't know, you can get Narcan where?
You can get it at Tapestry in Springfield, Westfield, Holyoke, Northampton. I believe they're up in Greenfield. I think some health departments have it. I have it if anybody ever needs it. There are Nalox boxes throughout some communities. Springfield has them in 7 or 8 places. Westfield has them in maybe 10 or 11 places now, like up at Westfield State College.
So here's an obvious point, and I'm kind of hardly worth saying this, but it's worth saying.
Yeah.
To get Narcan before you think you need it, because it might, if you don't have it, by the time you need it and you don't have it. So get it in advance of you thinking you need it, number one. And if you have it and you have a couple boxes of it, and keep it with you where you think you'll need it. In other words, don't keep it home on your shelf if you're out and about and you need the Narcan that's sitting at home 10 miles away.
Right.
Keep it in your car.
Yeah.
And then you'll have it with you more likely, right? So get it early before you need it and have it accessible where you are.
Yep.
Right?
I look at it as better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it.
100%.
You know,
Yeah.
and in some places, the Westfield Library, if you go to the front desk and say, do you have any Narcan, they have it. Which is pretty awesome.
And they have it usually for free.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so, Narcan is out there. We try to get it into the hands of the folks that are going to need it the most.
Yeah.
Because the true first responders in our communities are the folks who are using substances with their friends usually. If you and I are doing our thing and you go out, I'm going to be the first responder to saving you. Not the police, not the EMTs, not the fire department. It's usually the peers. So that's a good thing that Narcan is out there everywhere. So that plays a huge part in reducing the overdose deaths.
If somebody wanted to know how to use Narcan, I don't mean to interrupt you,
Yeah.
but and this is, again, you could talk about here's how to use it, but maybe it's an easy thing for somebody to say, okay, I have this box of Narcan, but exactly what do I do with it? There are YouTube videos.
Yep.
There are quick, it's very easy to learn how. I suggest, again, if somebody gets it, don't just say, oh, I have Narcan now, but at the point of needing it, let's read the directions. Maybe you should learn that in advance, and I just said YouTube videos, there's maybe other things, but that's just a quick access to say, okay, I can see it.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's instructions in the box. It's really one of the easiest medications
To administer, right?
Without
Yeah.
a doubt. It's a piece of cake, really.
Yeah. But it's not time to read the instructions at the time. Maybe in advance of saying, okay.
Right. Right. So those are always easy. We do trainings. Tapestry does trainings. I'm available for trainings.
Are some of those trainings available online?
Yes.
Okay, so where would they?
You could just a simple YouTube video
Narcan
of
training.
how to administer Narcan.
Okay.
What is Narcan?
Okay, you can find it pretty easily.
It's,
So
it's really
just
pretty
mentioning because
pretty-
I think that's important.
Yeah.
People have had Narcan and said it, whatever.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah.
So also, we have xylazine in our drug supply, medetomidine in our drug supply. Those are tranquilizers.
Narcan's
So-
not effective against xylazine. Is that correct?
So that's a no. What you want to do when there's xylazine involved is you want to administer Narcan because odds are there's some type of opioid that has attached to the receptors in your body, which created the overdose. However, you need to really do rescue breathing at that point, whether it's mouth to mouth or it is an ambu bag, or they now sell the little canisters of oxygen at Walgreens, CVS, Amazon. Those are also really easy to use. Okay. So, that's another thing that we have too, that we need to. Rescue breathing is almost imperative nowadays. So because there isn't as much, there's still fentanyl in the supply, but that's the fact that xylazine and medetomidine are more so the dominant, let's call it a cut. They're the dominant ones, so they're reducing the actual, people are just going into a deep sedation as opposed to an actual overdose.
That leads to fatality.
Yes.
Xylazine's pretty ugly stuff.
Yes.
Meaning, what happens
wounds,
to you?
Yeah, there's some wounds that can be created. Like if you have a little cut on your hand, usually what happens is that will then turn into necrosis, which is where the tissue begins to die, and can turn into really, really nasty, nasty wounds. They have to be treated. They will heal if there's treatment. So,
And if you don't continue the use.
yeah, if you don't get treatment, there has been amputation involved, and we don't want that to happen to folks.
Serious stuff happens when you take xylazine. It's pretty.
It's not meant for human consumption. So, but that's a part of the reason why the overdose fatality rate has dropped.
So what are you seeing with that? How much is it dropping, and what are there other factors that are affecting that?
So, you see on the media that, oh, it dropped 20% in Massachusetts or whatever the number was, 25%. Sounds great.
But
Still 96,000 people
Yeah.
plus are dying each year of preventable death, which is why we try to just let people know that get your Narcan. There's another medication out there now. It's called Revive. It's 3 milligrams of naloxone. It's a little less than Narcan, but that is a thing that we like to use as well.
easy
Same
to,
thing,
okay.
same exact application. Just boom,
All right.
push the plunger.
Yep.
There are a couple other medications out there that we don't recommend using. One is Opvi. That is nalphamine, is the actual medicine. It creates withdrawal for upwards of 10 to 12 hours for people, which is really a long time, where Narcan and Revive will put folks into withdrawal for maybe 90 minutes, usually at the most.
So if you administer Narcan, what can people expect to see happen immediately after Narcan?
So hopefully somebody's eyes will open, or they'll begin breathing. A lot of times you hear people, oh, I administered Narcan and the person immediately punched me. I doubt that. I really doubt that. I mean, maybe because you were right in their face. Maybe because you
Hit them
yelled,
hard.
maybe you did something.
Maybe they had a reason.
But most folks, when they come back to life,
Yeah.
are really confused. They have no idea what just happened. They don't know who you are. So what we try to do also is just, administer the Narcan. If you need to do rescue breathing, you do your rescue breathing. Once they start to come back, we need respirations on people. We don't need a conversation, right? They don't need to sit up and tell you
They're
their life
alive,
story.
and that's, yeah.
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 But then tell them who you are. Hi, I'm Mark. I just want to let you know that I administered Narcan. You were down on the, however you want to do it. Give them a little bit of space, right? We don't want to be
A
right
little
in
chance to
front of them.
regroup, yeah.
Yeah. And if you do that, it's probably going to be a nice little compassionate comeback, as we like to call it. We're not trying to, yell at people, punish them, belittle them, throw more stigma their way by saying, you just overdosed. Do you have any idea what and that's not the time or the place for yelling at folks.
Yeah. Let them kind of reacclimate to their surroundings. And you're right, compassionate recovery there is helpful. So you're seeing that it's reduced. So that's a good sign, obviously. And some things are working, harm reduction, Narcan access, Narcan training. But anything else that you see as a factor in this that you see through, is it because there's more treatment centers, or what else are you seeing?
Well, the treatment centers are great for the folks who want to go to treatment. There's a lot of people that don't want to, and I don't ever tell them they have to in order to work with me or come to our
Because
shelter or
when
anything
you're
like that.
forced to, it doesn't quite work as well.
No.
Right.
There's a story that a police officer in Springfield told me one time. He was very much pro Section 35, involuntary commitment. Yes, yes, yes. Send them there. Force them into treatment. So he did that to an individual. That individual wrote him a letter and said, "Thank you so much. What you did saved my life. I can't believe that a police officer would do such a thing." You know, it was a really nice letter, and he read it to all of us. And then when he put the letter down, he said, "And does anybody want to know how that kid is doing right now?" And we're all like, "Oh, yeah, of course. Let's hear it." And it turns out that he had resumed his use, overdosed, and died a couple days prior to him reading that letter to us. So doesn't necessarily, forced treatment sounds great to the people who aren't the ones being forced. And they have to realize that when you force people into doing things and taking them out of their normal regulated use of their substance, they're actually putting them into more potential harm when they get out of there and resume using.
And that obviously many times runs counterintuitive, right?
Yes.
If we let them, as if we're condoning their behavior, how is that going to do more good?
Right. And also a big part of things like education, educating the kids in schools. Parents. A lot of parents are always, still to this day, "Oh, my kid would never do that." Well, okay. You're maybe not your kid, but your kid's best friend, or your next door neighbor, or
Certainly your kid's exposed to it
Yeah.
one way or the other.
I always tell folks that we need to have open conversations about substance use.
Mm-hmm.
I have it with my stepkids. They know my past. I've said it in here before. They know every gory detail of it. I don't like some of the stuff, but I'm not afraid to talk about it, and it's just a regular old conversation, and be supportive of people. I mean, my wife is my biggest support, and
She's been through a lot with you.
She's
yes,
the one
yeah.
that I did most of the ugliness to, if not all of it.
How long you been together, you and your wife?
12 years, 11 years.
Oh, so she saw the last few years of you going through the deep-
She saw the pinnacle of the chaotic use, and then the rest of it, where it was up and down, and then it was solid. So
She stuck with you.
yeah, I still try to figure out why, but
Don't question it.
yeah, no, she's pretty awesome, and I just, and plus I have a great family. I have great supports.
Yeah.
My friends are amazing. So it's, and people need that. If you don't have that, the chances of you actually really getting better, aren't that great.
No. And it's hard with that kind of support and again, you could talk about a family like we're talking about, but in a family support. But I think the best way for a family to be able to support somebody, one, is you could say have some compassion, and of course, but more importantly is to get information from professionals, people in the field, to say, okay, help us make this decision. And the more informed they are, obviously, the more help they can see things they didn't see before. And it's easy to say, but I think that on their own, often, and I've heard this from many people, families saying, we didn't know. We didn't know what we didn't know.
Right.
And therefore we made bad decisions that, turned out to be problematic. And so, gosh, I wish we knew more. I wish we knew about Narcan. I wish we knew how to, deal with this. I wish we knew about Section 35. I wish we knew. And it's endless.
Yeah.
But the more informed people are, and again, the sooner you know it, even if you suspect, let's maybe parents or brothers, sisters, friends to say, yeah, I suspect maybe I should learn a little bit more about this before I start making judgments
Right.
or decisions for people. I just said the obvious, but
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you or me tell other people that we barely even know, and sometimes it could be family or friends, this is what you need to do to get better, but yet you may have never been through what that person has been, and you're telling them what's the best way to go.
Right.
That when people used to do that with me, I would sit there and be like, okay, yeah, I'm done listening to
What
you.
the hell do you know about this? Really?
Yeah,
Which
there
I
was-
think is changed because of your perspective. When you talk to somebody, you can say, look, I've been there. I know exactly what you're going through, and you can relate, and they'll see you say the things that resonate with them, that mean something.
And every single person, there's nobody that has the same journey as I have.
Yeah.
I will never have the same as somebody else had.
Mm-hmm.
So, to be there and just support people and be like, look, you can tell me whatever you need to tell me, if you even want to tell me anything.
Mm-hmm.
And I will give you a buffet of options that you can use. You may tell me to, kick rocks. Okay, cool. I'm here next year if you ever want to come back and talk.
Yeah.
And that's the way I go about it. You just have to be able to be open and talk about it. And when I hear families talking about tough love type stuff, yuck. That's all I have to say about that. I mean, I understand where families need to make a break and they call it tough love, but all you're doing is really setting a healthy boundary. And to do that, I think, you may not want that person in your house, but to at least talk to them on the phone, let them know that you're still supportive, and if they need anything, you're there. There's those are boundaries. They're not tough love. Like, tough love is just, to me, is such a horrible thing, because I don't think those words go together at all. They don't belong together.
Yeah, and again, it goes back to somebody without the experience making those decisions. Okay, here's what we're going to do. And all good intentions. And believe me, in my family, we've had the same thing. And okay, yeah, here's what we're going to do. And we're just inexperienced and uninformed. And here we are trying to make a decision on somebody else's behalf.
Right.
And often you say, well, that didn't work. I wonder why.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, the more informed you are, it's just to learn a little bit more, or have a conversation with somebody like yourself to learn more about it. Yeah.
When I first went to the Brattleboro retreat up in Vermont for my treatment, I think it was the day after I got my first arrest.
Yeah.
I did it for everybody else because that was what they wanted me to do. You need to go to treatment.
Oh,
okay.
Yeah.
Let's do it. All right.
I did it. Everybody happy?
I stayed for a week. How great was that?
Yeah.
Yeah. What did I learn? Nothing. If I did anything, it made things more of a white knuckle ride for me for the next 7 months until I started drinking again. And again, my recovery is abstinence. That is not what I preach for anybody. It's mine.
It worked for you.
Yeah. It's also my harm reduction. I think I've said that here before too.
Right.
Because I haven't attempted to end my life since then. I haven't been to jail. I haven't been arrested. None of that. So.
Well, one, it does work.
Yeah.
And it worked for you, and it can work for other people, but it doesn't mean it has to work for everybody.
And if people are using safely, I mean, that's a whole topic for another time. But, I just want folks to if they're going to continue doing what they do, which is their right, then do it safely. Yeah. Talk to me tomorrow. As long as you're talking to me tomorrow, I'm cool.
And you talk about this, and before we wrap up, I want to say that what I didn't know up until a few years ago, and meeting with and talking about so many people on this program and at the HCAT meetings, the Hamden County Addiction Task Force that we go to pretty much every month, and that's how I got to meet you. And honestly, I was overwhelmed with how many programs there are, treatment facilities, and I said, "Why? I just didn't know." And wow, it was pretty overwhelming to think about how many resources there are. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times we'll say, the family says, "Oh, gee, if they're facing some issues with addiction in their family or themselves, who do I call? I said, you know what? You have lots of people to call, lots of resources in the area. Call somebody. Call anybody, because they'll often redirect you and say, okay, what's your
Yep.
situation, and get you to the right place. So don't worry about, is this the right call? Call somebody, and it'll most likely get you. But going back to, even if you call and say, look, we have this, I don't know what to do, what should, and maybe, again, you can meet with a recovery coach, counselor, somebody who can say, let's look at this and find a path. But there's lots of resources in Western Mass that I'm aware of.
There's a ton. Western
Yeah.
Mass is lucky. Hampden County, especially Springfield area.
Yeah.
One of the things that people always say is, I can't believe that so many people are on the streets of Springfield from out of town. Like, we have people from Albany, New York. We have people from Pittsfield, Palmer, Worcester.
Yeah.
And I'm always telling them, it's because we also have a ton of resources here. That people know that. So that's a positive thing, right? So it's always, you have to look at a whole bunch of different things. But I always try to just make sure that folks ask the individual that they're meeting with, talking with, concerned about, what do you want? What would you like to do? Do you even want to do anything? And then if they say, I would maybe like to go to treatment, you give multiple options of treatment, not just, okay, this place is in Springfield, they have a bed, let's go there.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, they don't have a bed.
Right.
That's, try again.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there are a lot of options.
Yeah.
And I think calling, again, I say this not to be too generic, but pick one, call.
Yeah.
And then often they'll say, we don't have the capacity, but let's get you over there. And that I've found that so many people in this field that we see at the HCAT meetings, they all collaborate and work together very well.
Yeah, we have excuse me. we have a really great group.
Yes.
Everybody has each other's phone numbers
Yeah.
and can contact each other in no time.
It's incredible. Yeah. It's a great group of people.
Yep.
Well, Mark, I know we could talk a lot. And again, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Thanks, everybody, for listening at healingvoicesproject.org. All right, again, thanks, Mark, and congratulations again, buddy.
Yeah,
All
thanks.
right.
Appreciate it.
Talk to you soon. Talk to
right.
everybody soon. Thanks.
Cool.
See you.